Hi, I'm Dr. David Dobson. Welcome to Conversations. Today, my guest is Dr. Lien Beckers. Lien
Mhm.
is a neuroscientist. Her research is focused on the role of microglia cells in neurological disorders and the impact of the modified response in neurodegenerative disease. She earned her PhD in pharmaceutical and biomedical sciences from KU Leuven, Belgium. It's a pleasure to have you on my show, Lane.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Dr. Dobson.
Lane, can you tell us what neuropathology is?
Sure. So basically, neuropathology is the study of diseases affecting the brain, the spinal cord, and the nerves, which we collectively call the nervous system. So think it, think of it as understanding what goes wrong in the intricate wiring and tissues that control everything from movement to memory. And as a researcher myself, I study brain or spinal cord tissue, so to uncover the mysteries of neurological diseases. And these diseases are much more common than most people realize, actually. I think over 1/3 of the global population is affected by neurological conditions, so making them the leading illness and cause of disability worldwide. So I think in absolute numbers, more than 3 billion people are currently living with neurological conditions. A
Wow.
lot.
Uh, so, what brought your interest to neuroscience, Lane?
My fascination with the brain started early.
Okay.
I was always amazed by how this single organ orchestrates everything we do seamlessly, right? Like
Hmm.
our thoughts, memories,
Hmm.
emotions,
Hmm.
even
Yeah.
split second actions.
Yeah.
But what truly sparked my interest
Hmm.
was learning about the brain's immense
Hmm.
complexity. So,
Hmm.
for instance, we human beings
Hmm.
think and process information
Hmm.
at a slow speed of
Hmm.
about 10 bits per second. So we remember, we make decisions, and we imagine things at that pace. But in contrast, our sensory systems, which is vision, hearing, taste, smell, but also pain, temperature, touch, they gather data at about 1 billion bits per second. So these curious facts, they drove
Hmm.
my passion for neuroscience and inspired me to explore how such an intricate system can
Hmm.
malfunction, leading to neurological diseases. And I realized that tackling these disorders could have a significant impact on so many people's lives,
Hmm.
knowing that 3 billion people are affected and these
Yeah.
numbers are increasing. And
Hmm.
for most neurodegenerative diseases, there's no
Yeah.
cure. So that combination of complexity, fascination, and
Hmm.
the drive to help
Hmm.
people in need
Hmm.
continues to fuel my passion for neuroscience.
Yeah. I was
Yeah.
just wondering, does it has to do with the age also? Like as you get older, your neurons are not as strong, and when you're young, or it
Yeah,
has no effect.
it has an effect. Like many of these neurodegenerative diseases are
Hmm.
age related, and
Okay.
it's, of course, due to the fact that the cells in our brain
Hmm.
are just not necessarily malfunctioning, but not
Yeah.
as active as
Yeah.
they were when they were young. So, like
Yeah.
the slight
Yeah.
malfunctioning leads to dramatic consequences. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I hear quite often, especially like, for older people, they always suggest that improve mobility, do some exercise, and stay active. Is it really true being physically active has a impact on the health of our neurons?
Yeah, that's correct. It's like sometimes, weird or difficult to understand how that simple things can really
Mm,
change, but it's
yeah.
true. Physical activity, it's really um, proven to have a positive effect on the brain. It keeps us going, basically. And
Yeah.
honestly, maybe I'm biased because I'm a neuroscientist, but I've seen it in my life. Yeah,
Yeah.
like with my loved ones, family ones, other people getting
Yeah.
older, the
Yeah.
ones who were always active all their lives,
Yeah.
their brain was just so sharp
Yeah.
till the end. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Can you share your education journey? I know you are a neuroscientist. How you became a neuroscientist?
Yeah, that's a good question. Let me think. My journey actually starts during my undergrad students in biomedical sciences at the KU Leuven, as you mentioned.
Mm,
I did several internships, and I was captivated by in these
okay.
internships by the complexity of neurological disorders, and
Mm,
particularly conditions like spinal muscular atrophy (SMA), which affects infants and young children,
mm,
and also ALS, like amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, which is a devastating motor neuron disease
mm,
with no cure. So, yeah, during my master's program, I specialized in neuroscience and neurobiology of disease, which allowed
mm,
me to, yeah, dive deeper into how the nervous system is impacted at both the cellular and molecular level. And then my PhD was a pivotal moment. Here I focused on a rare childhood neurometabolic disorder. So that's a
mm,
field that's often overlooked, but
mm,
research is crucial for understanding the mechanisms of disease. And then afterwards, and so over the past 8 years, I've had the opportunity to work at leading institutions in
mm,
the US, like first at
mm,
Harvard Medical School, then
mm.
Columbia, and eventually Princeton
Wow.
University. And during these experiences, I could really immerse myself in groundbreaking research on
Mm.
neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's disease and multiple sclerosis. Yeah.
I'm just wondering, do you spend a lot of time in the lab? Like, how do you divide your time? Because you've been studying and you've been going so many institutions and doing all amazing research. Like, how do you divide your work and time? Like, just wondering.
Eh, It's not easy at times. Yeah, you have to be flexible, and you have to be dynamic, and I think you need a lot of energy. Yeah, because of course you have living cells and you have living animals in the lab,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
they also need to be fed and need to be changed, and that can be
Mm,
sometimes in the middle of the night. But it's good to have also social professional networks.
mm,
I joined some societies, and that helps, just keep the brain creative. That's the most important as a researcher.
yeah. You have been studying several neuropathological diseases. Can you share the work you are doing in these areas?
Yeah, absolutely. So my research spans a range of neuropathological diseases, from rare conditions to some of the most common
Mm,
neurological disorders,
mm,
um, affecting also individual across all age groups. So
mm,
infants, children, but
mm,
also adolescents and
mm,
adults.
mm,
So yeah, during my PhD, I investigated a rare childhood disorder, as I mentioned, and this devastating condition often presents at birth, sometimes also later on
mm,
in life, but with
mm,
severe symptoms like muscle weakness and developmental delays. And
mm,
my research explored the role of neuroinflammation, so
mm,
inflammation in the brain, and in
mm,
particular the behavior of microglia. So
mm,
there are my microglia, which are the specialized immune cells in the brain and
mm,
the spinal cord. And my key question was simple but yet profound. It's like, are microglia either protectors or contributors to disease? So are they friend or foe?
mm,
Um, a question which is not easily answered. But then in the US, I
mm,
expanded my work to more common neurological
mm,
disorders. And
mm,
for example, at Harvard, I studied how specific molecular pathways drive the dysfunction of microglia in diseases like Alzheimer's disease and multiple sclerosis. And by targeting these therapies, we were able to prevent the loss of neurons in animal models. So these, yeah, it's providing exciting new insights for potential therapies. Then at Columbia, we used genome-wide association studies. So this is actually a powerful tool for identifying gene-disease relationships. And by doing so, we discovered a network of proteins that were interacting in microglia during the earliest stages of Alzheimer's. And this is critical because targeting the disease at its earliest stages offers the best chance of halting or even reversing its progression. Right now, we just target them when it's honestly too late. It's so that's important. And in summary, my research has focused on understanding how microglia contribute to disease and on developing novel therapies to address their dysfunction. So whether it's in rare or common neurodegenerative diseases, my ultimate goal has been to uncover mechanisms that can guide better treatments for patients.
You mentioned that your research is focused on the role of microglia cells. What are microglia cells and why are they important?
Yeah, microglia are fascinating cells. They are the local immune cells in the brain and in the spinal cord. They're only here in the nervous system. And microglia are actually, you can see them as the janitors, the guards, and also the repair crew all in one. So they can be, physically, they can be compared to, let's say, an octopus, right? They have this enormous number of tiny tentacles, and with these motile tentacles, they constantly patrol the brain. So they are looking for damage or threats like infections or debris. And what makes microglia so interesting is their dual nature. So on the one hand, they're vital for maintaining brain health. They clear out harmful waste. They fight off invaders, and they even support the growth of new neurons. So they're even essential for learning and memory and normal social behavior. But then on the other hand, of course, when microglia become overactive or dysfunctional, they can actually contribute to disease progression. For example, in Alzheimer's disease, we have found that microglia sometimes fail to fulfill their normal tasks and worsen the damage.
Wow. So what happens when an injury occurs?
When the brain or spinal cord gets injured, for example, think about a head injury or by a major impact on the head, but also a viral intruder in the brain, like polio, rabies, herpes viruses. So microglia are then among the first responders. So they immediately change shape, they multiply, they rush to the site of injury to clean up debris and to prevent further damage. It's almost like watching a coordinated emergency response team in action. But unfortunately, this process is not always perfect, because if microglia remain activated for too long or they fail to resolve the damage properly, then they can actually cause this chronic inflammation, and this worsens the injury. So understanding how to fine-tune this response, so making microglia more efficient to repair while minimizing their harmful effects, and how we can manipulate their behavior to develop better therapies, those are basically the key areas of my research.
And what happens if these microglia cells lose control?
When microglia lose control, the consequences can be devastating. That's what we figured by doing our research in diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson or ALS.
mm,
microglia often switch from being protectors to aggressors. So they lose
mm,
control, they release toxic factors that damage neurons, and they worsen
mm,
disease progression. And
mm,
eventually, neurons die. And as we mentioned before, also here, age is another major factor. So, like over time, microglia they become less efficient at performing their protective roles. They are more prone to harmful behavior, and they're aging too, right? So that's
mm,
why neurodegenerative diseases as Alzheimer's and Parkinson's are often age related, and also genetics also plays a role. For instance, certain genetic mutations can impair microglial function. They lose
mm,
control, and they make people more susceptible to neurodegenerative diseases. So studying these genes and factors, they help us to identify targets for new therapies, such as drugs or gene editing tools that can restore the balance or microglial balance, let's say.
mm, mm. Yeah. I was wondering, sometimes some of the infant they're born premature, and a lot of time their brains are not probably developed. So I was wondering, I'm not sure if this is area of your expertise. I'm wondering how does this microglia cells work there? Because a lot of the time these kids have a very developmental delays, like global developmental delays, so they are not your typical kids when they're growing.
It's a very good question because microglia also are involved in brain development, and this is only something we have been discovering in the last decennia. So microglia are also developing, the brain is developing, and microglia are important for in processes that makes connections in the brain. So
Mm,
connections between the neurons to strengthen them, and this is essential for learning, but also normal social behavior. So that's why we realize microglia are also important in young infants who have
mm,
or having these mental retardation, developmental delays. That's
mm,
also often our microglia are either really at the cause for some
mm.
diseases, and sometimes really contributing to disease if they're not doing
Y-
this properly.
Yeah. How does this microglia contribute to the neurodegenerative diseases?
Yes, actually, in neurodegenerative diseases, microglia become a double-edged sword. So
Okay.
first, microglia are supposed to help protect the brain, right? But when
Mm,
they detect damage, they like misfolded proteins or dying neurons.
mm,
They can overreact, and as I mentioned, they release harmful and inflammatory molecules, and
mhm,
this can makes things worse by causing more damage to even healthy neurons. And microglia, they also clean up toxic proteins like amyloid beta in
mm,
Alzheimer's. But in diseases, they often fail at this
mm,
cleanup. And this allows the toxic buildup of these aberrant proteins and forming aggregates to spread throughout the brain. And also, like in brain development, microglia also prune synapses later in life constantly. And synapses are the connections between neurons, right? So to help, and this is to help the brain to reorganize and adapt and learn. But in diseases, microglia can overdo it, and they remove too many connections. And this leads then to memory loss and
mm,
cognitive decline. So while microglia are meant to protect our brain,
mm,
in neurodegenerative diseases, we
mm,
see that microglia contribute to disease by
mm,
driving inflammation,
mm,
aggregation, and, and,
mm,
and, and cell death. And so microglia, they can be friend or foe in disease, and
mm, mm,
it's all time and context dependent, of course, depending on the disease and how far we are. Are we at the
mm.
onset of disease or progression of disease?
Yeah. Your research is focused on the role of these microglia cells in neurological disorders and the impact of their modified response in neurodegenerative diseases. Can you share a little bit about your research?
Yeah, sure. I think each step in my journey has been like a building block, right?
Okay.
Guiding me toward the focus on microglia
Mm,
cells, but
mm,
also more understanding.
mm,
And initially, I explored rather how different cell types in the brain. So aside from the microglia and the neurons, there are also other cells, glia cell support cells, and they interact to see how they interact during health and disease.
mm,
And this crosstalk between all these different cell
mm,
types is vital for proper brain function. So I've
mm,
studied how these cells contribute to disease and
mm,
what underlying molecular mechanisms drive their altered behavior and their altered communication with each other. Um, I also developed novel diagnostic and also therapeutic tools.
mm,
For example, a double immune affinity strategy. It's called.
mm,
Basically, what we did is to isolate abnormal protein complexes in disease
mm,
for diagnostic purposes, but also help to understand the disease. And we also used at some point in Princeton University
mm,
optogenetic techniques. And here we apply light to control and study phase separation in living cells. So this helps us to understand how reversible protein complexes
mm,
turn into these irreversible pathological aggregates in neurodegenerative diseases. So
mm.
to mention a few things of what I did in my research.
Very nice. So, how you conduct your research? I mean, just to give some idea.
Yeah, I've approached neurological disorders from
Mm,
multiple angles to gain
mm,
always
mm,
fresh insights. So
yeah.
I've used various models and techniques, like
Mm,
including animal models, so
mm,
primarily mice.
mm,
Um, because human brain and spinal cord tissues are scarce because
mm,
access to these tissues is very limited in in a living person. We cannot just take a sample of a brain, unfortunately. But I was fortunate enough to work with autopsy and biopsy brain samples, and also blood samples from both patients with various neurological disorders and then healthy controls for comparison. So this helped me to really focus into the disease and see
mm,
what's going on, which is very
mm,
interesting.
mm,
And I think, how to conduct your research in the lab, for example.
mm,
We often, timing is critical, right? We often have
mm,
to act quickly to analyze samples right after they are delivered, especially these human samples, blood and brain samples. Um, and yeah, I've also acquired many different techniques which are
mm,
important for these
mm,
studying these complicated diseases. So I've done brain microsurgeries in animal models, but also used stem cell and gene therapies. And but also it's important to mention in research, I believe that collaboration is absolutely key. So
mm,
I've collaborated with experts in the field, but as well as with clinics and patients organizations. And I think these partnerships are, they have been very, invaluable in shaping the direction of my work. They have provided crucial perspectives on how to
mm,
approach my projects and study design, and
mm,
to make sure that our findings are not only scientifically robust but also meaningful in the
mm.
context of real world healthcare. Yeah.
So, Lean, what are some of the possible implications of your research work?
Our research addresses three main aspects of disease, basically.
Okay.
And first of all, understanding the molecular mechanisms behind its onset
Yeah.
and the progression.
Yeah.
Also, improving diagnosis and then developing therapies, right? So we
Yeah.
can't create effective treatments without fully understanding the disease, and we cannot treat it properly if we don't diagnose it properly. So through our work, we've gained deeper insights into the disease process. We developed tools for better diagnostics and identified potential therapeutic targets that could lead to more effective treatments in the future.
Mm. Where do you see the future of therapies for neurodegenerative diseases headed?
Um, I believe that the future of therapies lies in collaboration
Okay.
and innovation.
Mm,
We're making strides toward
mm,
better treatments thanks to advancements in areas like gene therapy, stem cell research, and
mm,
personalized medicine.
mm,
So exciting approaches involve like reprogramming microglia at early stages of disease to enhance their protective functions or suppress their harmful effects, but also gene editing technology to correct genetic mutations that impair microglial function or other
mm,
brain cell functioning, of course. Um, but then another area of innovation is personalized medicine, where treatments are more tailored to an individual's unique
mm,
genetic and environmental profile. Yeah, these therapies are still in their early stages, but they offer hope for tackling diseases that
mm.
currently have no cure at all. So, yeah, collaboration between researchers and clinicians and industry partners will be essential to bring these breakthroughs to patients. And
Mm.
I mean, if we want to solve complex diseases, we must design complex research, right? So,
Yeah.
asking for multidisciplinarity.
Mm. I was just wondering because you are a expert in this neurodegenerative diseases disorders. When people meet you, they probably ask you, wonder, do you have any advice for them to keep them they're healthy all the time, making sure that the neurons and nervous systems is all healthy and good. So what do you have to tell them?
Yeah, that's really a good question. It's as you mentioned, like just please keep on moving, right?
Yeah.
Do physical activity, also read books, keep your brain active. That's really the key. Keep it
Okay.
creative. Um, yeah, like filling out like puzzle, Sudoku,
Hmm.
but also, yeah, sometimes even trying to don't use calculators, just use your brain, just that really train your brain. So yeah, that's key. Of course, there are genetic or environmental cues that we cannot avoid, but it definitely helps. Yeah,
So
it doesn't hurt. Let's say, yeah.
definitely less TV times, I guess.
Yes.
More active time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know that a lot of parents are worried about the kids are on the video games a lot. What about
Yeah.
those type of activities?
Like video games.
Yeah, parents,
Well,
children are always glued on the devices these days, whether it's a cell phone, whether it's a computer. I mean, that's the new norm these days.
yeah,
In
like
olden
video
days,
games or
yeah,
these child TV programs like that keep
yeah,
you active. There's a lot of
yeah,
it in the news now,
yeah,
and I agree. It just triggers the brain of the kids, but not in a positive way. There's
yeah.
like no room for creativity. They're not
Mm.
open minded. It's really narrowing, yeah, their brain. So I would not. I mean, it's of course unavoidable, and it's fine. We all live in a modern society, but let's keep the kids' brains active and creative by, yeah, stories, coloring, thinking, yeah,
Playground.
playground time, of course, social conversations,
Yeah,
anything. Yeah.
yeah. What's next for you, Lean?
Yeah. now, after actually years of working in the US, I've recently returned to Europe, very recently, and I've had the opportunity to explore new opportunities, which I like, But one of my main goals is to bridge the gap between science and the public by focusing on science communication. And I believe it's crucial to make complex topics like neuroscience accessible and engaging
Yeah,
for everyone.
yeah,
But I'm also passionate about rare disease, advocacy, and bioentrepreneurship. So areas where I can combine my scientific expertise with my
mm,
desire to make a broader impact.
mm.
So yeah, while my career path is evolving, my passion for neuroscience and helping others will always remain at the core of what I do. Once a scientist, always a scientist, right?
Thank you for your time, Lean, and best wishes on the important work you're doing.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Wishing you all the best as well.